Bruce, how do I write an LOI? Today, I'm going to explain that to you in technical format. It's going to be effective, make you more money, and do it in less time. And that's the goal with the commercial real estate broker. Let's dive into this today. Letter of intent to purchase. You should have a sample draft. It should be in your Google Drive or in your Dropbox, something that's easily accessible. Now, if you don't have one, you can easily Google chat it, or we can share one to you with our Red Zone approved LOI template. Now, here we go. Once we dive in, let's get some facts first. We're going to need to answer about 10 questions in order for us to effectively get that LOI accomplished. What are those going to look like? Well, it's going to look like the property address, the date, our purchaser name. Is it in an LLC? Is it in the purchaser's name? Because that's going to be a difference. Now, an LLC might have multiple members. So you need to know, if it's an LLC, who is the managing member of that LLC. Now, the following proposal, presented by Bruce Elia Jr., Managing Director of KW Commercial, hereby expresses the above client's interest in entering into a purchase agreement to purchase the subject real property under the terms and conditions listed below. Parties intend that neither shall have any contractual obligations to the other with respect to the matters referred herein, unless until a definitive agreement has been fully executed and delivered by the parties. Prior to delivery of a definitive executed agreement without any liability to the other party, either party may 1. propose different terms from those summarized herein, 2. enter into negotiations with other parties, and or 3. unilaterally terminate all negotiations with the other party here too. What does that mean? It means that we want to negotiate in good faith. Don't negotiate with others with our LOI in place. Make sure that we could adjust terms. This is a template. If something changes before we go to a contract of sale, I can define that here, but it's still subject to change. And then 3, either party can terminate. It's not a contract. It's actual terms that could bind a contract that's going to be to follow, to be drafted by our attorneys in New Jersey. If you're in a title state, make sure you have somebody competent that drafts these purchase and sales. Going through, we have date, property address, purchaser name. We need to know the subject property. Which property are we purchasing? Now, always understand, with a property, we're going to want to include a lot and block. So in this, it labels the address of the property and the lot and the block that's associated with it in the town records. Now, why is that important? Because a property address may be inaccurate. We go to sites all the time. It's 301 this street, but it's actually 205 that street. How confusing, right? So unconfuse everybody by putting a lot and block. This way everybody knows. And when you look at it from an attorney's perspective, the lot and block is exactly what the property is. So you have to be accurate there. Purchase price. When we're drafting a standard LOI, understand that the purchase price is going to be something that could change. If it's a development, maybe it's scaling, i.e. if I got these units versus that units, it's a different price. So understand the purchase price could change. So you're putting it in there. You're also going to want to add in what the price per square foot is. This gives an idea of where that is in the marketplace and allows us to understand where we have our buy box and if we're outside the box, i.e. if it's such a low price, we know the price per square foot in the marketplace, it's a dummy offer, it's a tire kicker, we call them wankers, okay? But if it's, let's say, above the buy box and we know it's a very attractive offer for the seller, well, then we know that because it's outside the box in a higher format, our purchase price is going to show that. Now let's dive into terms. Seller to deliver a buyer definitive purchase agreement within 5 days after buyer's acceptance herein. That's going to be a huge item and a huge point that we have to dive into. That's going to say, hey, the contract signed, and we have this within how many days from actually getting this LOI. So now let's put in some of this information and let's start filling it in from here, and we'll continue onward down from that point. So today is October 26th, 2025. Can you believe it? I can't. I'm having a hard time believing it's October 25th. And I'm also having a hard time believing that I put it on caps lock. My bad. 2025. See, not perfect every time, even right out the gate, right? Caps lock. So let's dive in. The property address that we have is our listing at 300 Garibaldi Ave in Lodi, New Jersey. They sometimes have different zip codes within certain towns. So I always go to the NJ property records to verify this. So the report that you're going to see up on the screen here is from the NJ property records. So I'm going to look at that now. And get all the information I need. Because not only do I get the zip code, I get all the other information like lot and block, etc. that I need. So purchaser property address, 300 Garibaldi Ave, Lodi, New Jersey, and Lodi, New Jersey is 07644. Okay. Purchaser's name. Now, this buyer is purchasing in an LLC. It's an investment property. This is a 10-unit multifamily investment property, and this purchaser is purchasing it to grow the legacy wealth for his family. Or maybe it's short term, and he wants to sell in a few years, make a profit. Who knows? Either one. However, he's going to purchase an LLC because it gives you limited liability on that property. So it's reserved to just that property, and if anything happens there, it's only that property. It doesn't go off to purchaser on his personal or other holdings. Okay, so this purchaser name is going to be the property. Now, why do we do that? Because it's easy when you have a real estate holding portfolio to label the property address of the LLC, because then when you go into your holdings, you can easily refer to it and you know which one it is. Labeling it Johnny's New Property LLC doesn't give it the area, location, or anything like that, so it confuses people. The way we do it is we label it like that, or some derivative of that, or maybe it's in a trust and it's a separate LLC within that, and they have that labeled. I'm fine with that. Anything that makes you guys have clarity to understand who this purchaser is. Okay. Subject property. We are going to continue with the same copy and paste on the top here, just now into the subject property. Boom, copy and paste. It's an agent's best friend, okay? But you have to decipher the information. Purchase price. This property, we are asking $2.2 million. We're getting a purchase price of $2,085,000. Okay? Or the price per square foot. The building itself is roughly 8,000 square feet. So what we would look at is what the difference of what that is property per square foot. Now, where did we get that? We got that from the NJ property records. Okay. So if we look at this and we say, okay, 2,085,000 divided by 8,010 equals $260 a foot, per foot a year. You notice how right here, 260/SF/year, that's the technical acronyms for $260 per square foot per year. You want to write that specifically like that so it's well received by a commercial broker. Okay. Next up is the purchase agreement. Pretty standard. If you have this in here, just don't remove anything. Just keep it the same each one, unless a buyer's changing it or a seller's changing it. So we put a staple here within 5 business days from buyer acceptance. The seller has to send over that purchase and sale agreement. Now, why would a seller send over a purchase and sale agreement? Because you have control of the sale when you're a seller. And if you draft the documents and send it over, you spend a few bucks, you have control over the property sale. Why? Because it's much easier to send a contract from your side to a purchaser side and have them redline it and review it with more protection layers. If a buyer and their attorney send agreement to the seller and the seller side, then we have to review the entire agreement with a fine-toothed magnifying glass to make sure that there's no loopholes, exits, or anything that could burn us on the sale side. So always remember, if you are on the seller side and you're drafting an LOI, recommend the seller always send it over to the buyer. If you're on the buyer side, always recommend the buyer's attorney sends it to the seller. Why? Because you have more control. So which side of the equation are you on? That depends which side you want to draft the contract or recommend it. Sometimes you got great sellers out here, they already know this trick. They're drafting those agreements and they're sending them out, and there's no option. Seller sends them. And that's what we're going to have here today. Okay? The down payment, typically, what I like to see in a down payment is a 5%. Now, the only way that we go in a different format from 5% would be standard specific, like i.e. the seller said, hey, this is what we're doing, and the buyer said, this is all I can do. But for most developments, you'll see it a lot less. Because why? If you're going to go for approvals, have money locked up, you're not going to want a ton of it locked up. So this is a way to prevent it. But standard sale at 5% is what we're going to do today. So buyer shall deposit 5% in buyer's attorney escrow or title company within 3 business days of execution of a formal purchase agreement acceptable to a buyer and seller. The deposit shall be credited towards the purchase price at close of escrow. That means that if I put a deposit in, let's say 5%, so 5% of 2,085,000 is 104,260. So what I like to do here is buyer shall deposit 5%, or what the monetary amount is, so that they understand what's forthcoming, or 104,260 in buyer's attorney escrow. You see the difference? 5% plus the money locks it in together. Seller, anybody receiving that knows exactly what this is. So financing. Now, if this property is going to be a cash purchase, we put the old goose egg. Why? Because that's the best way that we can transact. I always want to find a cash purchaser. It's so much easier. I don't go through the contingency checklists. So you won't either. So if you could understand and outweigh the differences. If you have an offer that's very close in cash and you have a finance offer that's just a little bit higher, chances are you're not going to want to take that finance offer because it's less attractive. You have more boxes to check, time frames to go on. So if you have to hit a date, chances with financing and lenders these days don't happen the days that they have, that they indicate and that they have on their books. It always changes. And I'm working with sellers right now that are so frustrated with this, and I have to manage their expectations. Now, thank God that they're working with myself, and I'm happily preparing that for them. Can you imagine if you're left on an island, you're counting on this money and it doesn't hit, you don't have a broker that prepares everything in time, properly managing your expectations, you are sitting duck, and it's going to mess up all your plans. So don't do that. Financing. This one, we're going to put out a 50% LTV. Now, as debt has squeezed, guys, I don't know if you realize this, the debt rates went up for a while during COVID, especially with inflation and some other things. So what does that mean? It means that the 4 and 5% financing we got went up to 7 and 8 and 9%. So what does it do? Affects our finance. It could stall, kill all these transactions very easily just because the banks won't lend it out. Now, why is financing important, Bruce? Because there's what's called a DSCR, a debt service coverage ratio. Now, what does that do? It means that the bank's going to put a hedge. They're going to want to see, 1.25, 1.2, 1.29 for what their debt service coverage ratio is. If they don't hit that, they're not going to give you financing. So even if I had this LOI at full price, over asking price, etc., and I couldn't hit the financing, it's a fugazi offer because the offer is not real. It means that you're going to mess up the seller's expectations of where these transactions come in. So the first thing I'm looking at and diving right into is the finance. Are they qualified? Do they have a term sheet? And do I have a proof of funds that I can share with my seller and discuss the viability of this person transacting? Huge, huge point, because if you're not hitting those points, the sellers aren't going to trust you. You have to be their layer, their scrub. Hey, I'm getting everything cleaned up to get to your inbox. And that's why you hired me. Negotiation. That's why you hired me, is negotiation. So moving right on, we have financing LTV. So 50% of 2,085,000 is 1,042,500. You see that math? That's right off the top of the head math. I passed 4th grade and it's showing right here, and I'm very proud. If you can do it in your head, do it. Verify it with the numbers. And I joke because I handle numbers, path, and the math, so I'm constantly doing this. But I really want to slow down and make sure you guys understand. Do the numbers accurate. It's better received. Okay. LTV, this is what we call, what these little symbols are. That's LTV. Now you put the loan to the value. The loan that you're seeking, 50%. To the value, the rest of it, 50% together, it's 100%. So if that LTV doesn't equal 100, you're off. So make sure, 50, 50. It's an LTV of 50, 50, okay? Cruising down along, we are getting through this LOI. Title and escrow. Why? Because title companies close this, they insure it. They go through this whole process and checklist, like the escrow companies, to make sure that the check's clear and everything's above par, that there's no issues. They also scrub to make sure chain of ownership, all these other things are clear so that you can purchase. What I put in here is title and escrow companies will be represented by our preferred, which is Carnegie Title. Why? Because more control over the transaction allows you as a buyer or seller to get to the finish table to accomplish your goals at a higher probability. With outside representation, you don't have the same control, which lends itself to potential missiles that come your way. And those missiles could really mess up your transaction. They're going to make drama in the transactions. That's the first thing that came to my mind. So next up is going to be zoning. Why is zoning important? Because you need to know its current zoning. If it's not an allowable use from the purchaser, they may not be able to occupy the property. Bruce, what does that mean? Well, it means this. In auto, when you have a mechanic, that's different from when you have auto and you have a spray booth. Why? Because a spray booth requires a lot more rigorous, thorough check from the town. They're going to make you go in front of the board. It's a different animal, but it's under auto. But if you put an LOI and it has a spray booth and it's in an area where the town doesn't want it, I don't care what that number is, and I don't care what that purchase price finance looks like, it doesn't matter. They can't buy it, they're not going to use it, and it's a fugazi offer. That's why being a good commercial broker weeds this crap out. You know that that's not a good use because it doesn't apply with the town, and if we go for a zoning approval, it's going to take 90 days. Seller, do you want to wait 90 days for this? Well, you better make the offer attractive then. Better be over asking. There got to be contingencies. The buyer pays for taxes. They pay for operating expenses while they go for the board. Maybe they pay half of it. That's what I'm talking about. These differences will be the time frame of transaction and the way that you look at it as a broker. If you're hired to do this work, you better do a thorough job in understanding what the pieces of this puzzle are to get this to a close. Otherwise, those transactions are going to come to us, they're going to come to other commercial brokers when you could do it yourself. So, zoning on this property. This is a multifamily zone. So this is an MFer, multifamily. Cruising right along. We have due diligence period. I'm going to run through these check boxes. The due diligence period. How much time do you need to inspect the property? And then once you have that, whose closing costs are associated with this? Who's paying for them? Sometimes it's the seller, sometimes it's the buyer. Most times it's splitting it evenly. Buyer pays for theirs, seller pays for theirs. Buyer representation. Was there a broker involved? I think so. I think his name was Bruce, and that's me. So if it's you, make sure you put your name, your representation. If it's going to be with your own listing, it's in accordance to your listing agreement. If it's not your own listing and I'm representing my buyers, developers, I am putting myself on there and I'm putting what I am getting paid. Why? Because a little tip I learned was, hey, Mr. Seller, if I bring you an offer that's acceptable to you, will you pay me 2.5%? So regardless of whatever they're putting on here, I'm going to control my own destiny by putting my offer on the table and using the words, if I got this acceptable to you, will you pay me 2.5%? Because the answer is going to be yes. And if you hold that agent to it, they can tell you whatever percentage it is, but I went direct and I got that accepted. And that's a tip. That's a big difference between the way that we get paid and the way somebody else does. Okay. Closing date, escrow to close within 30 days from conclusion of due diligence period. Boom. Very simple. We conclude DD, that first 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. Then we close 30 days after. Pretty straightforward, right? Broker representation. So who is the broker, right? And then additional provisions. Anything on the file that's separate, they have to be known or in advance. Examples would be, I'm buying this building, but you're making sure that you finish all the steps outside. It's a new construction building, but additional provisions is, hey, you got to do sidewalk and sewer, and you got to make sure the grounds are right because you're delivering it to me, but I'm negotiating with you, and I need that done. Another additional provision could be, hey, I'm keeping in you as a seller for a sale leaseback for 6 months to keep that income in, and during that time period, I'm going to look for a new tenant to replace your seller, right? The income that they're going to pay for 6 months in that time frame. And that's how I do a lot of transactions where we can get some seller lease back for income coming in while I replace that income with a new verified tenant. Doesn't that seem smart? I bet it does. And it's one of the tactics that we use. So additional provisions. Just a couple of examples of it. Then we have who it is, what the date is. I put my LOIs valid for 1 week. Why? Because if they know that I'm going to take this LOI and use it for 2, 3, 4 weeks, I've seen agents just take our offers, take mine, and go sell to everybody else and get a higher number, get a more attractive number just because I put the LOI in. It's BS, but it happens all the time. So what stands in the way becomes the way. That is the way. So sharpen your pencil here and make sure it's only valid for 1 week. That's it. Otherwise, I'm removing this offer from the table. Mr. Buyer, Mr. Seller, who is it? Signatures. So, reviewing this, continuing on. Due diligence period. Buyer's purchase of the property shall be subject to verification to buyer's sole satisfaction of the condition of title physical structure, roofing condition of the property, absence of hazardous or toxic materials. Pretty straightforward. Copy and paste. This should be on your standard template. The only things you remove are going to be per the deal. Like Garibaldi here, we are going to remove some of this because this is not applicable. So what are we doing? So subject to buyer's sole satisfaction of the condition of title. Title's fine. That's a standard. Physical structure. We are going to limit physical structure to structural condition, i.e. the building's standing and it's not falling down. That's fine. If it's anything else, I'm not going to have somebody bust chops over for no reason. So, roofing condition of the property. So I think I can remove condition because I have that labeled last. So roof of the property. Remember, as is, major items, roof, environmental, right? So, and the absence of hazardous or toxic materials. That's that environmental one we're talking about, right? Subject to properties having clean and marketable titles prior to closing. That's pretty standard. So we have that in here, condition of title. So I'm just going to remove that. And again, this is just real life. I'm editing it. I'm showing you guys this is how you do. Standard, and then you customize. Buyer's due diligence period will expire 30. I like to outline these a bit. So if you see that 30, it labels it. Doesn't show anything else but clarity. I even put usually these in here. 30 days from conclusion of attorney review period. Closing costs. Seller and buyer to pay their own closing costs. Standard every time. I always put that because I don't want anyone thinking otherwise. Bruce, what would be a position that changes? Well, let's say you have seller concessions, where the seller's going to give 15, 20, 25,000 to the buyer. It's going to have to appraise at a higher number, but if it does, they get some closing costs, attributes to paying their attorney, taxes, maybe even furnishing it within the building or getting it renovated. Right. Closing date, escrow to close within 30 days from conclusion of due diligence period, very standard. I'm going to leave that in there because that's going to be where we're at. We have a 30-day DD, 30-day close. Broker representation, seller shall pay to KW Commercial et al. Bruce, Elia Jr. and market brokerage commission in accordance with the terms and conditions of a separate written listing agreement. Always remember, you get paid by an employing broker. So the broker is the one that receives it and then disperses it. So that's how we have to get paid. Now, additional provisions on here are going to be pretty simple. This is going to say we don't want to retrade on this property. It's a multifamily. If there's some cash flow differences that the buyer can isolate or taxes that increased and we didn't know that in that period of time, they can push back. And this is how they stall transactions. This is how they try to get better pricing. We call it retrading it. And when I hear this and I sniff this right out from the beginning, because I'm looking for it. I'm looking for everybody that's going to do a retrade or some type of mess up on my deals, and I'm calling them out from day one. So I'm going to put no buyer retrades due to finance differences. And this is exactly where we want to hold it to. Because if you have that in place, no buyer retrades due to finance differences, as is purchase. Just reminder that it's going for an as is purchase. Okay. This letter shall be valid through, well, if we got the 1 week theory, we got the 26th. There's 31 days in October. That's going to be 5. So we have October 5th. We'll leave it. November 5th. Sorry. Okay. Best regards, Bruce Elia Jr., Managing Director, KW Commercial, Fort Lee. Some information, so make sure you put your contact information immediately below there so that they can contact you, email, call, or text, and then have these signatures. When we look for signatures, we use DocuSign, so we're going to upload it and have it DocuSigned out to have the easiest form of receiving it and sending it back and sharing it. So we put the buyer's name. Now here's the thing, the name of the managing member of the LLC. That's who we put their name on. The LLC is the name of the new entity to be formed. New entity to be formed right there. So if it's 300 Garibaldi Ave LLC, that's what you put there. Then today's date. Okay. The seller, always reminder that the seller's name, when we put this LOI up here, we can include it here as well if you want to, or just include it in the bottom. The seller's name is always found in the NJ property records under what the actual ownership name is. Now, if Johnny Rockets owns the property, but he owns it under an LLC, it's not going to be Johnny Rockets that's on the title company. it's going to be what the name of the property owner is. In this case, it's a different LLC. In this case, this name is a totally different random LLC. So I'm going to put that as the seller with the name of the managing member, the name of the customer, the client that I'm actually working with. His name is not Johnny Rockets LLC, right? It's going to be John. So I'm working with John. He's got an LLC he's purchasing or selling in, and these are the entities right here. These are the members to those entities. These are the dates that we have right now. It's pretty straightforward, and it's a lot to unpack, but you got this. I know you could. So what we have here is now a standard letter of intent to purchase. This is going to arm you with the ability to go out there, look professional as a residential, turning into a commercial dominating broker, or a commercial broker that need to refine some systems and make sure that they were effective by making sure that they covered their LOI basis. It will make you more money in less time and be more impactful into what you're doing with your commercial business, because I know when I receive this done right in a good format, I'm ready to go. I'm looking to do the transaction. There's reasonability within pricing and terms, or a commercial broker or seller or buyer that's in it. I know that we can make this thing happen by putting the glue together, and it starts with our LOIs. That's today's lesson on how to draft an LOI purchase style with Bruce at the helm.